So I want to welcome everybody to this afternoon session, competitive analysis. I'm Don Domes, and Shelley Myron is also going to be joining us. Thank you there for the wave, Shelley.
Good evening.
So, both Shelley and I were InvenTeam grantees. I actually was an InvenTeam grantee when I did the application with my kids on pretty much the same time frame that you folks are doing it. So I know really what you're up against as you're trying to get all this information together and get it ready to go. So we're a little bit behind. I'm going to jump right in here. Sam, next slide. And we want to do a quick recap. Of course, on your Invention proposal, it's going to be a single PDF document, double-spaced text, Times New Roman, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. And of course, it includes a variety of things, which we've gone over in the past. Today, we want to really talk about competitive technologies, and I have particular passion for this. Of course, your proposal, the performance specs of what it's going to do, your works cited. I'm not going to go back over this because it's been gone over. Let's go, and the document is going to be approximately 15 double-spaced pages of text and images. And as Lee mentioned in previous ones, we really encourage you to do images. A lot of you are going to find 15 pages may sound daunting at the beginning, but usually what happens is you end up running out of space and you're cutting things out. So it'll come right together, and pictures and just sketches, diagrams, stuff that I don't want to say use a napkin, but just sketch some things out, and anything that helps communicate so that the reviewers can kind of see what it is that you're trying to do with your team and your kids. Let's go to the next slide. Competitive analysis, what you want to do here is address of course, you're gonna identify a problem that you want to solve. That's the beauty of Invention, is we basically make life better through invention by coming up with new and novel solutions that solve a problem. So you identify your problem that you're going to solve. And last week I mentioned that if you're having a hard time identifying a problem, contact some agencies within your area. Like we worked with our sheriff's department, and they had a particular problem that they wanted solved. And we actually had some kids that created a prototype for them that would solve that problem over a period of time. But once you've identified the problem, and along with the problem, it's really good to know who it is that's going to be the end user of that. So that helps you kind of define what it is, and to figure out what is currently on the market. It's actually pretty easy. We talk about, Shelley's going to talk more about patent search and stuff, but I want to get kind of high level on this and say, just go to Google and see if you can buy the thing, or go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards or who knows what, and walk around the store and see if you can buy something that can be easily modified to become the thing that you want. Amazon is a great place to go. Of course, Google, Amazon, the key there is your keyword searches. So an example is, I worked with a team that wanted to do a camp stove that essentially could be used like in Africa. And so they have a little bit different fuel there, and so where instead of sticks, they have animal dung and all kinds of stuff. And so part of the question on the stove is, how much stuff do you have to put into it, and how much heat do you get out of it for how long? And so they wanted to develop a more efficient stove, because the stoves are used for cooking, so people can prepare their meals and stuff like that. And they actually did get the grant, but when I went to help them later on, I was able to find between Amazon and Google and some stuff almost similar thing to what they were creating that I could virtually buy off the shelf. Now, they did have a unique piece to their camp stove, And that was that they were going to generate, at the same time that they were generating the heat for cooking, they felt that there was additional heat available. And so they were going to turn that into electricity and hopefully charge a cell phone while they were also cooking. And so that was part of the unique piece of that. But even that, that addition using a thermocouple to generate electricity, that was somewhat commercially available already after they got started working on the project. So what we want you to do is be sure that you've done the Google search, you've shopped Amazon, that the thing the kids are trying to do is not just essentially readily commercially available or something similar that with a little bit of modification would solve the problem, because that probably is not patentable. Now we talk a lot about this. It should be patentable because that will help you determine if it's somewhat unique, has some characteristics that really will begin to put it into that qualification for an invention. If you have a patent number, of course, if you found something, you can use Google Patents to go in, you can look up the patent, use Google Patents and read the patent and see what's claimed. And that will also help you sometimes with search words and just understanding the technology lingo. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, Sam. So now we'd love to get some feedback from you folks. Unlock your microphone. Who's seen a patent? Who's read a patent? What is a patent? Do you have any questions? Can you make any comments? Go ahead, George.
Hi. Yeah, I could say I've seen patents and read patents, and one of the comments I'd want to make those is a little bit what you said, that sometimes you have a great idea and then when you start looking for it, you find it in a patent or something. I would tell your students, don't be discouraged when that happens. I'm usually happy when that happens. It means it was probably a good idea, and now let's move on to the next one, right? Let's see if we can make it better or whatever. But it's sometimes surprising. You think you have the best idea in the world and you start searching it and it's already out there. But that's a good thing, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. It is a good thing. Exactly what you said. I know the project that my kids did, we did the patent search and everything. We were all good to go. And in about, I think it was January, Microsoft filed about 10 patents on our idea. So you can't, they thought it was a great idea too. So we didn't get our prototype done before somebody else jumped in on the patents, but we were ahead of the game before we submitted. Other comments? That's great. Thank you, George.
Yes, hello. So for my team, we were doing our research on patents, and we did a national patent, and we only found one kind of similar to what we're doing, and it was in China. But then when we tried looking for US patents, we didn't find anything. And as George was saying, I feel like that's a good thing because it makes our project seem unique.
That's excellent, Katrine. Good job. Great experience for your kids. Now, just because there's all, go ahead.
One of the other things that you want to keep in mind is when you find those things, cite it and then comment on it and say, you know, this is what they have, but this is what we're going to do, and show how it's different, and be very careful about explaining those points.
Anybody else? Questions? Shelley and I are here to help you today. We've both been through this process. We know what you're going through. Okay, well, Sam, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll have more time for questions. And if anybody has a question, you know, raise your hand and we'll get you on. Shelley, go ahead.
So, wow, this is cool. This is the patent that we received with my team from Cesar Chavez back in 2014. it took a long time to get it, but we applied for it, and we were lucky enough to have a patent lawyer that volunteered to work with us. There's different types of patents that you can apply for. So there's trademarks and copyrights, and then usually a utility patent is the type that we applied for. There's a new provisional patent, like a lot of things that you might see on like advertised on TV are like patent pending. So people apply for the patent, but they know that the window of opportunity and the economic return is just selling it. So they try to do that instead. But it's basically, a patent is an agreement that you get this intellectual property for a specific amount of time, and you publicly disclose everything about how it works. There's different parts of the patent. I guess when I go try to do this type of research, I would read the abstract and I would look at the pictures. And then if you really think that there might be some conflict, the part to look at is the claims. Now, we want to make it really, really, really clear that the goal of participating in InvenTeams is not to get a patent. This is something that I went in to talk to my principal about and say, hey, if we go down this road and we actually invent something, I want like, is it okay? Like, we're good with the kids get the patent, right? It doesn't go to the school district, the kids get it. And he just kind of laughed at me and said, yeah, we'll talk about that when it comes, or yeah, don't worry about it. Of course, that's okay. So it was just a short conversation, and nothing signed, nothing, like, no big deal. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I thought there would be more. So
There is.
The more in detail, like, information about it. So there's some things that I wish I'd known ahead of time, and it affects the team's behavior a little bit, I think, or it can, if they have just a little bit of knowledge about what's involved in the patent, like the process. So I thought, as the teacher, I could just say, okay, these are all the kids on our team and they get to be on the patent. And the patent lawyer said, no, that's not how it works. You have, what makes your patent is the claims. And so the claims are how what you have is different than everybody else. Like, it's the nuts and bolts of your invention and why it's special. So we had to go back and remember and take our engineering notebook and figure out who came up with each of those ideas. And then those were the people that got to be on the patent. So if kids are on the communications team and they say, well, I don't have to be there for that part because I'm not on that team. Well, if they're never there for the creative and the problem solving part of it, then they're being left out of this whole process. So kids have good ideas, like we all do. Everybody here has something to offer to this conversation. So participating in that, and most inventions are made by people in the field that they don't work in. So so try to pull, like, I use that to try to pull them in and get people to show up, because even if you're on the communications team or the fundraising team, or like, to be a part of building the actual invention is why they're there. And it's a fun part of the work as well.
I want to re-emphasize, the goal is not to get a patent.
Right.
We want you to do the patent. So if your idea is unique enough, there's a good chance you could potentially qualify for patents. We had 13 or 14, I think, InvenTeams that have actually gotten patents. Now the teacher, I don't know of any of those where the teacher wrote the patent application. Generally, what happens is some patent lawyer finds out, about you and your kids, and they come alongside, and they're the ones that do all the nitty gritty work on this. Like, don't get afraid here that you're going to have to write something worse than the grant application on the road. That's not what it's about. But if you really do want to read, both your kids and yourself, you want to read several patents.
And I've had students. Sorry.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I've had students that wanted to become patent lawyers, so they love going down this road and reading things and exploring things and maybe having them find their favorite invention and having them go look up the patent on it is a fun activity. Like, they're just really cool things to read. I know if Lee were here, she would tell the story about the little bag on the airplane. Because she was like, wow, there's a patent number on the barf bag. So she took that and looked it up and was just intrigued with, how is one different than another, and is there more than one type? We do the click pens and have the kids look up the mechanism in here that makes it go click click. There's at least 5 different ways to do that, and that you can figure out what those are and take apart pens. That's it's really kind of an exciting thing to do, to see how many different ways people can make that happen. So the research itself is really kind of fun to do.
Part of the barf bag thing, just the way some of those barf bags don't open well. We've all tried to open those Ziploc bags and stuff like that for sandwiches, etc. But there's just the opening for the barf bag is a patentable kind of a thing if you've got an idea that is unique and has not been patented before.
And I'd be more concerned with the closing device, but yeah.
Next slide, Sam.
Take it away, Don.
Yeah, we want to do a little quick recap here. Of course, on the idea of the invention is that it's useful and unique. It doesn't have to be I know it says technological here on the top of the slide in the right-hand corner, but it's got to be useful and unique. And so let that somewhat guide you. There's some pictures here of some things. One of the other teachers that Shelley and I work with, Doug Scott from out in Massachusetts, there's a picture here on the right-hand side of his invention that they created. And essentially this was, I'm not going to take time to go into it, but this went to the White House Science Fair, as well as eventually getting patented. And it was a rescue device for people that had fallen through ice. Next slide. Thank you. Go ahead, Shelley.
So there's to try to navigate the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office site is kind of daunting. So Google Patents is a great place to go, as is Free Patents Online. And you just type in some keywords about what you're trying to invent. And you might use this, like George was saying, sometimes you find something's been invented and you can improve upon it. And so that's a great opportunity as well. So just using these 2 places are great, and they're user friendly. A great way to find some things about what you're trying to, and so you want to just try to exhaust the words that you would use to describe what you're trying to make, and maybe the problem that you're trying to solve. Anything you'd like to add, Don?
No, that's good. Chat, I'll mention that chat is also open, and if you just want to post a question or make a comment in chat, you're welcome to do so. Fortunately, with the internet, and this is not like it was 40 years ago where we had to go find virtually a law library and, you know, rummage through books and stuff. I mean, you can do this anywhere with the internet now. It's really, really relatively easy compared to what it's been in the past. Next slide. So on your InvenTeam application, of course, you're going to put all this background information and you want to kind of succinctly describe your patent research process. Half a page is probably good for that. Bullet, it's easier to read a bulleted comment than it is to read paragraphs. You're welcome to structure this thing so it's easy to read, get right to the point. State your team's unique position compared to specific patents. Mention briefly if there's a direct or similar competitor already in the market. Of course, state why your technological solution is different. And not all good ideas are patented. Some of the things that are out there may not even be patented. But you want to work on something where the kids are, the process that the kids are going to go through to get these aha moments where they figure out how to do something that they don't know that anyone has ever done before. That's an exhilarating experience for them. So you don't want to basically have them working on something that's already out there that can just be purchased.
And the differences could be just really small, but from a user standpoint, it might be huge.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be super electronic or super technical. We've had a lot of things that are that way, and that's great if you want to take that on. If your kids want to take that on, we've had kids that have learned how to program as part of the process of, they've learned how to do electronics as part of their process. Of course, getting resources, all of us fellow teachers that have done this before, I can't encourage you enough to send Lee an email. Different ones of us have different expertise, and if we can help you, she'll forward that out to us, and we're happy to do a phone call with you. If you're unsure on something, contact Lee, and she'll send you to the one of us that probably is in the best position to help you out. We're really here to help you get this application done. Next slide, Sam. So educators, your to-do list this week, of course, have you filled out those fields in the application? Go ahead and get that done. Is there an administrator that's submitting a letter of support and a recommendation? As I mentioned last week, I had given that job to my principal. She didn't get it done at all, didn't tell me she wasn't getting it done. I thought she'd get it done, so I wasn't checking in with her. My application almost got rejected because it didn't have that. And when I found out that the letter of recommendation support had not come in, I happened to be talking with a district administrator about the idea that we were going to do an invention project. And fortunately, that district administrator knew me, and she just immediately said, "Oh my goodness, I'll write that for you. Who do I send it to?" And she did, like, immediately. And otherwise, I might have not even been in InvenTeam or been here today. So it just needs to be some administrator in the district. Doesn't have to be your principal. Just get it and get that thing done so it's off your checklist. Make sure that your team members have started in on this competitive analysis. It does take a while to kind of look through different things, search Google. I even look on eBay. There's a lot of old things that you can't buy anymore, but they're patented. They're on eBay. Some of those patents may have ran out, and there may be some creative adjustments or modifications that could be done to those. Identify 2 team members at least to tackle the patent searches. You're in community engagement and team photo. You want to get those done. I love using community resources. I had hundreds of hours of adult volunteers in my classroom. That's another whole discussion, but I do live in a technologically rich community. So identifying who your customer is, who is it that's going to benefit from this? And a lot of times, if you'll just get together with the people that's your intended customer, so to speak, they'll tell you all kinds of things that'll enlighten you on what you can do with this idea. So teachers, you're not going to come up with all this, but you're going to be the guide by the side, and there is a few things on here that you've got to get done with your district, because your district's going to sponsor you, of course. Next slide, Sam. So the students, their to-do list this week is to continue to focus in on the problem that they want to solve. And of course, putting that problem in a set of words is a really good idea. If you want to hit something, you've got to identify what it is. Start to think about the most useful and unique solution to the problem. It might be technological, it may just be mechanical, or whatever it is that they're going to come up with that's going to be useful and unique. And as they think about solutions, students, you want to conduct a competitive analysis to determine if and how your solution is unique. Is it already out there? Is it already out there in a way that very small modifications solve it? Have you taken your team's photo? And remember, inventing is just plain fun. Next slide. Oh, go ahead.
And I just wanted to add, like, remember to tell the story and tell the parts that are exciting to you and that make it like, oh, this is amazing. Did you see what I found? I found this, I found that. And do the focus on the things that, like, look up the things you need to do for your invention, but then take some fun times and look up some other things that you might not, like an apple slicer, like who invented that? And like, don't be afraid to get sidetracked a little bit, and then share that knowledge with other people and tell those stories.
Yeah, enjoy your time with your kids. This is really a wonderful opportunity for them. So many hands make light work. Remember to communicate, and of course, what you're working on and duplicating efforts sometimes tends to happen, but you've kind of got a goal here to get this application submitted. And so you want to kind of divide and conquer if you can to some degree, while yet keeping the group together in terms of how this is done. I don't know how you folks are running your meetings. That's really not a part of this thing this afternoon, but Shelley and I are happy to talk about how we organized and ran our meetings with the kids, how we set up. I tend to do a thing where I have the kids get out a calendar and they make a list of the things that have got to be done. And then we kind of identify how many hours each one of those are going to take. And then they look at the calendar and look at the due date and try to figure out, so how are they going to get that many hours in? And that helps them figure out when they've got to get together, who's got to have what done, etc. Some of you, I don't want to get way off here. Some of you have had some Agile project management training. Agile's not a bad way to go for managing this. I was really fortunate on a computer programming contest I did with some kids that I had a volunteer from industry, and he managed all of his projects with Agile, it seemed like. And so he basically did all that, and I didn't have to. I could just watch it happen. He was wonderful at just organizing it and doing our sprints and different things that we did to get ready for the contest the kids were going to one spring. Questions? Folks, Shelley and I are sure happy to answer any questions or comments that you have.
I wanted to throw out a comment that some of my students that have learned the project management end of it, went on after high school to work at the university and were very quickly promoted because of the project management skills that they learned during these types of projects. So students, you're adding to your resume.
And again, I want to remind you that sending any and all questions, send them to Lee, and she'll, if one of us would be particularly good, she'll pass it on to us, and let's get in touch and help you out. Other questions or comments this afternoon? George.
I had a comment and a question related to the patent searches. One thing I wanted to put out there, whenever someone does a patent, it's required that you cite prior art, and also when they do the review, they pull up prior art. So anytime you find one patent related to the thing you're doing, there'll be 5 or 10 or maybe even more other patent numbers listed in that patent that then you can go look up. And it just really builds as once you find one that's related, it's kind of a whole process of going through lots and lots of information. So I just wanted to put that out there so people know that. But one of the things that we found, and this is kind of a question to see if there's a resource out there that might be helpful. We did a lot of patent search by ourselves. And then I had another project we were working on during COVID on a mask challenge. And we did a professional patent search. We actually paid somebody to do a patent search for us. And it was much better than anything we could do ourselves. There are guys out there that really know how to do this, but it gets expensive quickly. And I was wondering if anyone knows of resources out there that are somewhere in between paying a lawyer for a couple hours or doing it yourself. I don't know of anything.
I would ask for sponsorship because we got lucky on that, and we had a couple lawyers come forward to help our team. And things are much more national than much more. The world is smaller now than it used to be, so they don't even have to be in your community.
Right.
Yeah, I would second that. Exactly what Shelley says. I'm on the board of we have a little organization here in Oregon called the TechStart Education Association, and basically it's a nonprofit, and there's a set of industry professionals, some teachers and lawyers and accountants and stuff that they're all interested in promoting kids getting into technology kinds of things. And if somebody contacted us as TechStart, we've got lawyers that would probably pro bono do a couple hours or so. I mean, which they can, when somebody's a professional that does this a lot, they can do a lot in a relatively short amount of time, especially if they're not having to cross all their T's and dot all their I's and turn in a report. So getting those, and it's part of what I found was, and why I had so many volunteers working with my kids. We were doing a lot of invention projects, et cetera. We're a full-blown CTE program, and with end of the seniors all did a big project at the end of their 3-4 years in the program, and we would bring in these professionals, and the kids got so much benefit from getting to talk to these other adults and asking these other adults questions. And it really, as adults, we all get fired up when we meet a kid that really has interest and has some passion, and we can see kind of a spark there. And so it's a great opportunity for essentially pro bono volunteers. It's just a matter of beating the bushes a little bit.
And
Yeah.
George brings up a good point that I remember the trail experience, because once we found something, then we found something else and found something else, and it was easy to go down that. You could fork off and have different kids go down each of those little rabbit holes. One of the other things that I was going to say is sometimes I've never felt so dumb, felt so like illiterate as reading patents, because it really is its own thing and it's its own language, which is why some people are really good at it, and because they've learned that specific skill. So if you have trouble with this part, do as well as you can, and it'll be enough.
Mhm.
Dan, I just wanted to reiterate on the points Don and Shelley said before. You know, this whole InvenTeam, it's more than just the invention, right? You got to think about the rest of the students, their roles. You guys have community engagement teams. That's kind of their role. Have them go out, talk to maybe local lawyers or local patent folks, and they might be able to offer up some of their time. And it's going to be good experience for those students to reach out and gather support. And it's just another thing they learned, experience how to do.
Additional questions or comments? Folks, we're here to help you. Well, I heard on the news today that we're like 300,000 teachers short nationwide. So I know that all of you are just swamped and being asked to do all kinds of additional things and subbing during your preps and everything else. We're excited that you're interested in doing this with kids. Remember, we're here to support you. We don't want to burn up a bunch of your time. If you don't have any questions or anything, we hope this has been helpful. Is there one more call for questions or comments? And like I said, after the seminar's over, emailing Lee is the best way to go on this, because she'll get you answers or get this out to us.
And we like to chat. So if you just want to talk to somebody about your idea, like, give us a ring. We'd love to chat with you about it, and we'll keep it on the download.
And you can say, hey, Lee, we were on this thing. I want to talk to Donna, or I want to talk to Shelley, or whatever, and she'll get you connected with us. So thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon. We wish you all the best as you start school and work on this application.
Thanks for coming.